fix my mic right now. So I'm trying to make sure that my mic sounds, you know what I'm saying, like crispy. And I just realized that I had like the gain, like I had a limiter. Basically, it kept like breaking the limiter. So it was actually pretty decent. Let me just go to my settings again. Go to my mic gain. This is like my personal mic gain. So I'll probably put the mic gain up like, I put the mic gain up like that. And then I basically speak like that with the mic gain. Oh, that's sick. Hey, good nug. Good nug. Okay. That's mad. It's not going to sound the same, but it sounds crispy though. Heavy compressor. Let me go medium. Okay, let me go light with my compressor. I'm going to go light with my compressor. What phantom power is. But that's what phantom power sounds like, guys. Does it sound clean? I don't know if this is the new mic. This is the new mic. Chat, are we liking the new mic? Are we liking the new mic, chat? That's the real question. That's the real question, guys. Are we liking the new mic? I don't know, but inshallah we'll run in the mic with this. When am I posting on crossplay? So I want to get an Among Us. I want to get an Among Us stream with like all of the mandem. I want to get an Among Us stream, and then like we'll definitely run some crossplay. We'll definitely run some crossplay. But for now, I'm not gonna lie to you, chat. We're gonna have to basically like run things simply. Mic is good. Okay, crispy, brother. I'm liking this, you know. I'm liking this. I'm liking this, brother. I'll be honest, guys. I'm actually gassed with this W mic that we have, bro. This W mic. And man, then you're gonna be gassed because I'm gonna take this jollof rice bowl downstairs. And brothers, I'm gonna show you the new gaming chair that we have as well. We actually just got a new gaming chair. It's actually mad, bro. Like, bro, man's been reclining. Man's been reclining on the thing. Reclining on the thing. This is nuts, bro. I'll be honest. Like, I haven't experienced such perfection. Man said that mic quality is making me feel things. Keep feeling them things, brother. That's what we want to hear. We want to hear that good nug. You know what I'm saying? We want to hear that good nug. You feel me? I want that good nug. So that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying, bro. I mean, I think it's great nug. Oh my days, it sounds so clean. It sounds so clean, chat. Oh my days. I'm gonna be so honest with you, chat. I am so gassed. I'm so gassed for this, bro. Should I pick up St. Augustine's soliloquies? Facts. So Augustine was a poet, though. I'll tell you this for truth. Augustine was a poet. Augustine was a poet of a poet. Radio quality, brother. You man are gassing my thing, you know. You man are gassing my thing. You man are gassing my thing. Oh my gosh. Hello, Sig. I'm so ready. Fam, I'm ready as well, bro. I'm ready as well. But I'm trying my best here. I'm trying my best here to make sure that the whole nug is good. So what I'm doing now is, fam, it's actually so mad. I'm gassed for this, bro. I'll be honest. I'm so gassed for this. Like this debate. Ooh. I don't like that. I don't like what happened there. Alright, is it gonna sound a bit? Ooh, that's clean. That's clean. That's clean. I ain't gonna. Ooh. Oh my god. Ooh. Oh my god. Yo, I ain't gonna lie, chat. Yeah, this is that bass in your voice. You feel me? So real. I'm reading the confession with the Latin text, and he's amazing. God bless you, Sig. Yeah. See, God logic. This is how you set up your mic. You feel me? Know what I'm saying? We're gonna do a debate between Copleston and Russell. God bless Jordan Flores for the mic. We appreciate you, Jordan Flores. Look at that bass in the voice. Look at that bass in the voice. You feel me? Look at that bass in the voice, bro. Look at that bass in the voice. Look how my voice became instantly deeper. It became deeper schmeeper, bro. It became deeper schmeeper. No cat word is born. I became deeper schmeeper. I became deeper schmeeper. know what I'm saying? Look at that, bro. Y'all can't tell me nothing. Y'all can't tell me nothing. Yo, this is tough. This is unbelievably tough. Unbelievably tough. Unbelievably tough. This is beautiful. This is a beautiful day. This is a beautiful day. Okay? We got a lot of announcements to make as well. So we're just waiting for the man to get into the stream. Because I know a lot of people like seeing my stream. So make sure you share the stream. Tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. You know what I'm saying? Make sure you share the stream as well. Alright? This is cleaner than a last loincloth. You're allowing it. Abu Ahruf. God bless everyone. Oh my gosh. Say mums. Wait. Did we get a Christian conversion? We got a Christian conversion on stream, guys. What the hell? We got a Christian conversion on stream. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar. We got a Christian conversion on stream, guys. That's insane. What? We're going to run this back again. We're going to wait until the stream probably hits like 100 people. And then we'll start. Be like, live now. Alright. So now, publish. Yeah. That's good. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. I hate the fact that I have to like ping everyone as well. It's like, yeah. Boom, 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 boom. Hey, yo, Skibbly Sig, what's up? Yo, Cat is in here as well. We have a whole thing, bro. What the heck? We got a whole thing. This is actually gonna be clean because it's gonna be my opinion on like the Copleston-Russell debate as well. So I can't wait to review this. It's actually going to be so much fun. Plus, we have Piers Morgan as well. Piers Morgan did a debate as well. So, this is going to be some crazy stuff, man. I'm not going to lie to you. This is some insane content. So, let's run it. That's how I'm gonna introduce the stream. They don't know yet because they can't hear me. I put myself on mute, so. Allahu Akbar. Oh, I can't wait. It's actually gonna be a fun stream as well, man. I can't wait. Oh. Can't wait. Oh my days, wow. Dawkins. Yo, Richard Dawkins. This guy went from living in a mansion to getting divorced by his wife. Like, imagine from being one of the top atheist apologists on the interwebs to now, yeah, you should fall off. That's devious work, man. That's that pre-lust. That's that pre-lust, boy. That's that pre-lust. That's that pre-lust, boy. That's that pre-lust, boy. That pre-lust, boy. That's that pre-lust, boy. Oh my days. Oh my goodness gracious me. Da-na, da-na, da-na. Alright. Man, them. Oh, I'm so excited to show you, man. I'm so excited to show you, man, still. Alright. What's going on? Out of the ways, people. What's going on? What's going on to the man, them? What's going on to everybody? Look at the new mic. Look at the new mic. Oh my days. This thing sounds crispy than a bomber seed. This thing sounds crispier than a bomber seed. Man, them. I don't think you understand, bro. I don't think you might understand. This sounds crispy as heck, bro. This thing sounds crispy. I'll be honest. This joint is mwah, chef's kiss, bro. Guys, before we get started, okay, 10 minutes into the stream, haven't really done much. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on the notifications so that you know you can see the next time that we upload on the channel. Okay, so make sure you do that. Okay. Make sure that that's the case. Make sure that's apparent. Make sure that's something that you're going on to do. Okay. So I appreciate anyone that's doing that. The likes, the comments, the subs, everything. I really appreciate everything, all the efforts you man are giving me. Okay. So thank you so much. But guys, we have to. It's actually a sad day. Because officially, we need to, I can't believe I'm saying this, but, you know what I'm saying? It's actually going to be really sad about what's going on. But we're going to have to say goodbye to the chair. This chair has been with me through so much. This chair got me through so much adversity, so much problem, so many debates, so many times that I absolutely baked a Muslimic apologist. All the debate reviews. This means something to me, man. I love you, bro. You got me through a lot, bro. In my darkest hour, when everyone thought that I was cooked, when everyone thought that I didn't know how to do philosophy or theology, this guy right here, he stayed with me, bro. Goodbye, my friend. Hey, goodbye though. But we don't care about that. We don't care about the chair. This chair will be immortalized as my right-hand man. My right-hand man. Never to leave my side. Are you mad, guys? Are you mad? Listen. You already know we have to get the hype music up as well. You already know we need to get the hype music up as well. Because we're introducing a new member to the community. This individual, I had to assemble him myself. Chat, I had to assemble him myself. This individual right here, he is unlike any person that we've seen before. Master, I put my blood, sweat, and tears and 45 minutes into making this fat boy. I've got to go on the master's robes and that. And welcome, the new gaming chair. This is good enough. This is great enough. Thank you, Jordan. I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you so much. If we be real, I don't know how to feel. I'll be overseas. You'll be on your knees. So, Mandem, thank you so much. We finally made it. We can now call ourselves streamers, brother. I'm now a streamer, you get? Man's got the gaming chair. Man's got a gaming chair. You really wanted to take it there. You really wanted to take it there. We will be the head and not the tail in Jesus' name. Amen. We will always lend and never borrow in Jesus' name. Amen. The Bible says money come fast, money. I'm referring to Eddie 1. Don't worry, I'm not referring to the Bible. Money come first. Money. If it ain't me in the back of the rider. Mama don't want to cry no more. Mandem, I thank you so much. Without you guys, I wouldn't be in the position that I am to be making content at all. Honestly. Honest to God. Like, I have to be, like, unbelievably humble. And I have to keep telling myself to be humble because you guys put me in this position in the first place. Do you get? So I want to say, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for putting your faith in me. I want to say it again. All of this setup, my room, all of this stuff, I keep it authentic for you guys. The amount of times I've almost been doxxed, the amount of times people have threatened to kill me, all of these things, I do it for you, man, because I love you, man. And I want to say a special thank you to one brother in particular. He's a mod in the chat. His name is Jordan Flores, bro. This was the guy that hooked me up, bro. This was the guy that hooked me up, bro. I want to tell him thank you, Jordan, honestly. And I hope to meet you in person one day, bro. Like, Jordan, actually, God bless you, bro. Like, this guy has been a day one, bro. Day one. When I had nothing. When I had absolutely nothing. No one believed in my thing. No one believed in what I was capable of being able to provide to this community. No one believed in my thing. But this guy was one of the first subs, bro. This guy, man, he'd be waiting for me on Twitch. I wouldn't show up. And then he found me on YouTube one day and the bond was just like this, bro. Jordan, I'm talking to you, Jordan, bro. If you ever see this, bro, thank you so much. Honestly, bro, thank you so much. You inspire me to be a better content creator. You inspire me to be a better streamer, bro. I'm not even lying. There's no cameras around me, nothing. I love you guys. I love you, man, so much. You man are real. Don't let anyone ever doubt that we can make this the greatest Christian community on YouTube. We will do it. We will force ourselves to the top and we'll stay at the top. And we'll bring everyone up with us. Because I love you all. This was great nug, bro. Honestly, bro. Man's got a new mic. Like, I'm so grateful for a new mic. Like, honestly, guys, the money will never change me, bro. This is mad. You think I could ever afford this, bro? It's literally down to you guys, bro. But there's another person that I have to thank, and I'm not even trolling this guy. This guy pushed me on, bro. This guy pushed me on. He actually pushed me to be better, bro. This guy's not even a Christian, bro. He would always comment in my videos, Sig believes in three gods, Sig believes in X, Y, and Z, Sig this, Sig that. But he actually pushed me on, bro. I have so many people I need to thank. Orthodox John, if he ever sees this. Big David, Apologia, my best friend Ananda. Alonzo Harris, the Muslim. Eli. All you, man, bro. I'm a mum. Thank you. Thank you so much for allowing me to do the things that I want to do. For giving good into the world the only way I know how. Which is talking about the greatest religion of all time on the internet. Even if I die, even if my content dies, Christ will never die. Which is why I'm happy that we live for him. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. I appreciate you guys, and I promise, I make this my promise to make sure I make as good a community for you, man, as possible, bro. I appreciate you guys, honestly. Let's get this channel to 10K and hunt down that 100K. Let's hunt down that 100K. Thank you so much, everyone. Honestly, bro. Genuinely, thank you so much. Oh, man. I'm not going to cry. I'll probably cry if I get to 100K, I'll be honest. Because that's not possible. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, bro. You, man, are real, bro. Oh, how can I forget RJ, bro? Jeezy. How can I forget RJ, bro? Bro got that darkened intellect, bro. Bro got that darkened news. You feel me? So that's the new equipment that we have, yeah? That's the new equipment. That's the new equipment that we have. Let me say how it's on. If we be real. Oh. I don't know how to feel. I'll be overseas. You'll be on your knees. That's cold. I sound. Thank you so much. I sound crispy, bro. We finally made it. We can now call ourselves streamers, brother. Yeah, that's mad. 100K by mid-2025. Fam! If we hit 100 nug by 2025, long. At 10K, we need to meet up with Jordan Flores coming to the UK and Thomas Apologia supplying the Big Macs. We will get that done. You straight on some headphones, say? Yeah. Okay, so before we get started, obviously Patreon. Patreon.com/SIIIG1SIG1. That's the best way to support me. Super chats are always on. So if you do want to send a super chat, send that chat that is super color fragilistic, espialidocious. Make sure you send the super chat through. God bless you as you do so. Obviously, be cheerful if you want to. If you don't want to, be stingy. That's okay. Other announcements as well. The Diddy debate. So the debate that we had with Diddy Dean, that debate is going to come out soon. We are in the middle of editing the video, so it just takes time to edit these things. Best believe we will get the debate out, okay? Now, to get to more pressing matters, okay? Man says send us the remnants of the chest so it doesn't get corrupted. Is going to No, don't worry. I'll send you the remnants. So let me just ask. Put a 1 in the chat if you want us to go through the Copleston-Russell debate first and then Piers Morgan versus Richard Dawkins. Or do I do Copleston versus Russell first and then like tomorrow or something we go through Piers Morgan and Richard Dawkins? Because I have a plan for a stream on Friday which is going to be going through Muhammad Hijab stuff. Diddy Dean is everywhere. So do you want me to do both on the same stream? Put a 1 in the chat if you want me to do both on the same stream. or two if you want me to split them into two separate streams. God bless you, Sid. God is doing something special through you. If I don't agree with everything you say. I enjoy watching you along with Avery and Sam. Thank you, man. That's literally it. So 1 in the chat if you want me to do both. 2 in the chat if you want me to do one and then the other. Copleston debate is more intellectual. So you want me to... I can do the Copleston-Russell one first. Okay. Okay, so the man are saying they want Copleston versus Russell first. All right. I'll also need to review the debate between the Ahmed Qureshi, right? Because that's what the chat wants. So, yo, why is this so? Yo, chat is petering off, man. This is good. Hey guys, can you be active in the chat as well? Be as active as you can in the chat, because then I'll respond, innit? Okay, so here we have the full debate between Frederick Copleston and stuff like this. Okay. All right. Full Russell Copleston debate on God's existence. I am so happy, bro. But I also want to show you guys what I've been doing behind the scenes. Okay. So I'm not gonna show you I'm not gonna show you who permitted this, okay? But right now, okay, I am actually working on something really, really big. So if I can actually move this over, that'd be great. Let me just make sure I can move this over and that should be fine. Now, you guys already know that I do a lot of stuff in my spare time. And one of the things I do in my spare time is go through philosophy. Now, right now, I'm actually going through translations. And I'm actually translating the work of Gregory Palamas, as you can see here on the screen. So, away from everything, I've been actually translating the works of Gregory Palamas by myself. Now, Nectarios has been doing his own project, but I'm doing this letter to Damianos, the philosopher among the monks. And this is what I've been doing, just some Eastern translation here, as you can see. This is the Byzantine Greek, right? And then this is my English translation. Right now, I'm translating some of the stuff that Gregory Akindinos did. And I actually have express permission to do this from... I actually got permission from the Eastern Orthodox Church to engage in this practice. I've isolated the name of the person, but we're actually taking this up to the Archbishop of the country that I reside in. And I'm just telling you guys, we're going to show this to him. By God's grace, it should go well. So yeah, that's what I'm doing behind the scenes, guys, okay? I work on translation sometimes, and I want this to be a really good project. So it's really weird because I can't work. So I don't have I didn't go to work this month to work on this. Been going through stuff, as you can see there. Going through the Greek there, English, then you have the Greek, then you have the English. You know, this is just, these are my works. Translating this from Crestu's rendition of the ancient Greek as well. So Crestu has the modern Greek, and then he has the ancient Greek. So hopefully, by God's grace, these things should be well. So pray for me, and in whatever way you can support the community, always support the community by commenting, and sharing notifications. Okay, so Copleston-Russell debate on God's existence. Let's get into it.
As we are going to discuss the existence of God, it might perhaps be as well to come to some provisional agreement as to what we understand by the term God. I presume that we mean a supreme personal being, distinct from the world and creator of the world. Would you agree, provisionally at least?
Hold on. I want to get better audio.
As we are going to discuss the
Nah, that's the best audio we got, guys.
As we are going to discuss the existence of God, it might perhaps be as well to come to some
Okay. This is something I can get behind. Definitely something I can get behind.
provisional agreement as to what we understand.
Right. Okay. So he's gonna just define his terms, which is really important to go through. You need to definitely define your terms, so then people can know where you stand on a given issue, because it's just gonna make things easier when it comes to engaging with belief. You know, it's just gonna make it easier.
By the term God, I presume that we mean a supreme personal being, distinct from the world and creator of the world. Would you agree, provisionally?
Oh my days! Oh,
this statement as the
that's
meaning
crazy.
of the term God?
Wow.
Yes, I accept this definition.
Okay.
Well, my position is the affirmative position, that such a being actually exists, and that his existence can be proved philosophically. Perhaps you would tell me if your position is that of agnosticism
Okay.
or of atheism. I mean, would you say that the non-existence of God can be proved?
Oh,
No,
he's gonna
I
say
cannot
no. He
say
has to
that.
say no, that he doesn't
My
think that.
position is agnostic.
Would you agree with me that the problem of God is a problem of great importance? For example, would you agree that if God does not exist, human beings and human history can have no other purpose than the purpose they choose to give themselves?
Ooh. So just to clarify who the players are. By the way, how's the mic sounding now? Hopefully the mic is sounding okay. So just to clarify who these people are. So the person that you see on the screen right now is Frederick Copleston. Frederick Copleston is an amazing philosopher. He was a Christian philosopher, really good on atheist-Christian relations and arguments for God. Now, a good work that you want to read if you want to get into just a history of philosophy, he has an entire volume set on philosophy. He was a Jesuit priest who loved history of philosophy. And what he's best known for he's not even best known for his argument for God per se, but what he's best known for is his actual arguments, his actual history of philosophy. So he articulated a history of philosophy, and that's basically become the most influential history of philosophy section of books that we have. Jeezy, RJ with a 20. He says, all love, bro. Trying to learn all this on your own is tough, but you provided a community of great resources and, more importantly, support. Join the Patreon or your intellect is darkened. Facts. Join the Patreon, super chats, or your intellect is darkened. So that is Copleston. Now, Bertrand Russell, for those of you who don't know who Bertrand Russell is, Bertrand Russell was one of the greatest atheistic philosophers of the 20th century. And the reason why this debate is so important is because it pretty much sums up how atheist and theist debates run afterwards. You have the greatest atheist and the greatest theist in analytic philosophy debating together on a topic on the existence of God. And this shows the maturity of the view of theism and of atheism, and how those views relate one to another. And the beautiful thing about this is when it comes to the existence of God itself, I think that Russell loses the debate here, because I've seen the debate before in a quick run, but Russell also makes really compelling points, much better than many people usually give Russell credit for. Sig, Christian Prince could have used you a little bit ago, bro. Some philosopher was arguing logic. Now, this debate happened in 1948, and he's going to show 3 general arguments for God that we're going to use, okay? And these arguments for God are really good. They're not bad arguments for God, depending on how you utilize them, depending on their convincibility to the person that you're talking with. And these are the three general arguments that became popular. So the first argument that Copleston's going to use is going to be an argument from contingency. Okay? So he's going to just make a standard contingency argument. He's going to make a standard contingency arg, similar to the way that Aquinas and many of the traditional philosophers do as well. Another thing that's important is that actually this debate sort of can be seen as representative of the old medieval scholastic philosophy and the way that that's grown over hundreds of years, and the analytic philosophy of the 20th century, of the 19th and 20th century. The new kid on the block, that movement, that's now become the standard for philosophy and logic now, and the way that we do philosophy in the West. Right. So we have the old money, the old philosophers, and the new philosophers sort of going together, seeing whether the arguments from God will be done. So the first argument he's going to use is an argument from contingency. Then Then the second argument that he's going to use is going to be an argument from morality. And then the third argument he's going to use is an argument from religious experience. Now, the religious experience argument is going to be really interesting. I really want to see how that lands, and how Mr. Russell, Dr. Russell, I should say, right? He did get a doctorate. How Bertrand Russell does respond to this. So, Dr. Russell and his response to this was very interesting as well. So this is what we're going to be looking at. All right. So, which ones do you think are the most effective? Well, I think the argument for morality is very persuasive for convincing a person that perhaps there may be a God that dictates that. Because I feel like we are very much inclined as creatures to be moral, and we want to be able to ground our absolutes in something other than ourselves. We don't want to come off like hypocrites or arbitrators of our own. We like to engage in this paragonistic thinking of believing that we're not just doing things that we want, but we're doing things that we must because of a higher calling, because of a higher cause. And I think that's the case for many of these discussions.
Practice is likely to mean the purpose which those impose who have the power to impose it.
Roughly speaking, yes.
Yes, this is Russell, and they had this over the radio on BBC.
Though I should have to place some limitation on your last clause.
Well, would you agree that if there is no God, no absolute being, there can be no absolute values? I mean, would you agree that if there is no absolute good, that the relativity of values results?
This is a really good argument. Well, not argument, but this is a very good point that Copleston is establishing here. So what we'll do is we'll actually put this to the side. So we'll have the actual debate playing, and then we'll have it on one side, and then we'll have this. Is that okay, guys? I think this should be fine, right? Do a stream about Jewish cosmology. So this is what's going on. So Copleston raises this idea, and he says, do you think that if there is no absolute being, that there are no absolute values? So this question is an axiological one, right? This is a question on how we value things, right? How we make specific value judgments on various issues. And Copleston is saying, look, if you want to say that there is no absolute being, that there is no God that really grounds these realities, right? then you should also be willing to accept that there aren't really absolute values. But from that, he can then argue that there's no absolute truth, because there's no objective demarcator that ascribes values to things. So value is relative to intellectual conceptions.
No, I think these questions are logically distinct. Take, for instance, G.E. Moore's Principia.
Relativity of value. If there is no God, no
Roughly speaking, yes.
Themselves. History. Would you agree that if God does not exist, human beings and human history can have no other purpose than the purpose they choose to give themselves?
It's a really good point.
Would you agree that if God does not exist, human beings and human history can have no other purpose than the purpose
And this is final causation, right? So this is Aristotelian in nature. If there is no God, then history and humans have no other purpose other than the purpose that we give ourselves.
they choose to give themselves, which in practice is likely to mean the purpose which those impose who have the power to impose it.
Roughly speaking, yes, though I should have to place some limitation on your last clause.
Yeah, so the last clause was this second sentence.
Who have the power to can have no other purpose than the purpose they choose to give themselves.
So he's saying if there is no absolute God, then history and humans don't have any other purpose other than the purpose that we give ourselves, so human history. But then Copleston attaches a clause after this, and he says this.
Which in practice is likely
to
mean the purpose which those impose who have the power to impose it.
There you go. So in practice, then those that provide that purpose are the ones that have the power to impose it. So notice what Copleston is saying. Copleston says even if Russell agrees in principle to this, how do we extrapolate that? How do we take that and apply that in a practical setting? And in reality, if this is the case, then who actually decides the purpose of humans and the purpose of human history? Well, in practice, Copleston makes the idea that the people who are in power impose this history. Now, Russell historically, of course, would not support such an idea. So Russell's going to move and try and say, nah, that's not the case. Which is why I think he's going to jump on this second clause.
Roughly speaking, yes, though I should have to place some limitation on your last clause.
See, I have to place some limitation on your last clause.
But would you agree that if there is no God, no absolute being, there can be no absolute values? I mean, would you agree that if there is no absolute good, that the relativity of values results?
If there is no absolute good, then the relativity of values results. Now, Copleston is trying to get at this idea of a lack, right? A lack of meaning, a lack of value as well. So semantic identity and axiological identity are two different things that philosophers generally have. And Copleston is saying that we don't really treat them as distinct usually. So if something's meaningful, it does have a sort of value in some sense. Some things can be valueless and still mean stuff, and that's fine. But he then says, okay, well, do you think that since there is no absolute valuator, then there are no absolute values, and so all values are subjective?
No, I think these questions are logically distinct.
Logically distinct. Logically distinct. So distinct in their content.
Take, for instance, G.E. Moore's Principia Ethica.
He's referring to G.E. Moore. Yeah, he's referring to the Principia Ethica. So this was a book by G.E. Moore, who, by the way, did believe, I believe, in the existence of God. I might be wrong, actually. Yeah, he's most best known for ethical non-naturalism, paradox for philosophical methods, and things like this. But G.E. Moore is most commonly known for his ethics, the Principia Ethica, which became basically the standard book on ethics to do so. He mainly claims that you can't really define what good is. That's the main thing.
Where he maintains that there is a distinction of good and evil, that both of these are definite concepts. But
yes, they are definite concepts, but do you think that having goodness requires, if it is objective, requires an objective arbitrator for that goodness?
he does not bring in the idea of God to support that contention.
Well, suppose we leave the question of good till later, till we come to the moral argument, and that I give first the metaphysical argument. I'd like to put the main weight on the metaphysical argument based on Leibniz's argument from contingency, and then...
So he's using Leibniz's argument. So for those of you that don't know, Leibniz's contingency argument, basically, here, let me actually get the formulation of the argument. I want to get the formulation of the argument, and then I want to get how Copleston articulates it. But I might as well just listen to what Copleston will say.
Later we might discuss the moral argument. Suppose that I give a brief statement of the metaphysical argument, and that then we go on to discuss it.
It seems to me a very good plan.
Well, for clarity's sake, I divide the argument into distinct stages. First of all, I should say, we know that there are at least some beings in the world which do not contain in themselves the reason for their existence. For example, I depend on my parents, and now on the air, on food, and so on. Now, secondly, the world is simply the real or imagined totality or aggregate of individual objects. So on. Now, secondly, the world is simply the real or imagined totality or aggregate of individual objects, none of which contain in themselves alone the reason of their existence.
So that's premise one, I think. So if we number this right here, right? So let's go premise one and then premise two. Now, notice how like Copleston's wording this. He's being very careful. So he's like, we know this is the case, right? Right? We know that there are some beings that do not contain in themselves the reason for their existence. So it presupposes obviously that you know them. And number two, the world, in his definition, is the real or imagined aggregate totality of individual objects. So why am I highlighting real or imagined? Because perhaps he is anticipating that perhaps maybe someone like Russell might move to an anti-realist claim about the world, because anti-realism was a popular discussion point in the mid to late 20th century. Okay, so since the world is the real or imagined aggregate or totality, so aggregate totality just being like the sum, you know what I'm saying, like the complete sum of all individual objects. But he defines what an individual object means, because perhaps someone could say, well, God is an individual object, right? Because he's a thing that exists. And Copleston defines an individual object as follows: a thing that does not in themselves alone contain the reason of their existence. So they don't exist because of themselves. They exist because of something else being true, or because of something else being the case, something else in, you know what I'm saying, in a Thomistic metaphysics or Palamite metaphysics, actualizing them, causing them, putting them into being, into reality. And this is a standard Jesuit argument. It's a standard argument. So we're going to see how he builds on this argument as well. Just none. All right, let's continue.
There isn't any world distinct from the objects which form it, any more than the human race is something apart from the members.
So this is something also really interesting that he adds on as an addendum. So he's building this argument and he's caching it, and he says there isn't anything distinct from the world any more than there is a thing called humanity that is distinct from the members of the human race. Fascinating. So this seems, in my view, to be a moderate account of universals. Because each individual object in the world, each individual thing in the world is going to have the property of being part of the world, or being in the world, or being part of the universe. The same way that each human has the property of being a human, but there isn't this thing called humanness as distinct from other humans, other than the fact that humanity as a universal is instantiated within the object of humans. And this is very similar to the Thomistic view on this, which makes sense because he's a Catholic Jesuit. This makes much sense. Guys, make sure to share the stream as well. Make sure to tell a friend, that we're analyzing Frederick Copleston and Bertrand Russell, okay? Make sure you tell your friends.
Therefore, I should say, since objects or events exist, and since no object of experience contains within itself the reason of its existence, Therefore, I should say, since objects or events exist, and since no object of experience contains within itself the reason of its existence, this reason, the totality of objects, must have a reason external to itself, and that reason must be an existent being.
Now, there is a fourth point that he does make before he gets to this conclusion in premise 4. I'm just trying to set up the TikTok stream here, guys. So,
will this be the reason, I should say, since objects or events exist, and since no object of experience
since objects and events exist, which, again, all of this is uncontroversial, right?
Contains within itself.
And since no objective, so he then says objects and experiences exist and experiences do not contain within themselves the reason for their existence.
The reason of its existence. This reason, the totality of objects must have a reason external to itself, and that reason must be an existent being. Well, this being is either itself the reason for its own existence, or it is not.
So the totality of all contingent objects must have an existent reason for their existence external from itself. Now, what's interesting as well is he then says either this existent has its own reason for its existence in itself or it does not. Okay? Now already we can see a fallacy shaping up here that Russell might want to capitalize on. So Russell might want to capitalize on a composition fallacy, right? He might say just because something's true of the parts doesn't mean it's true for the whole. He might capitalize on that. So we want to be careful to see what he actually does motivate himself to say. Okay?
It is well and good. If not, then we must proceed further. But if we proceed to infinity in that sense, then there's no explanation of existence at all.
Yeah, this is the contingency argument.
I should say, in order to explain existence, we must come to a being which contains within itself the reason for its own existence. That is to say, so, if not, then we must proceed further. Well, this being is either itself the reason for its own existence, or it is not. If it is, well and good. If not, then we must proceed further. But if we proceed to infinity in that sense, then there's no explanation of existence at all. So, I should say, in order to explain existence, we must come to a being which contains within itself the reason for its own existence.
Either this existence has its own reason. If it doesn't, if it is, then the chain stops there. And we have an ultimate explanation. Say a god of some sort, right? Or if it continues, then we don't ever get existence at all. Now, this might be cached under what we call a per se chain rather than a per accidents chain, so a temporal chain. I think he's just referring to a per se chain, so without time being instantiated.
That is to say, which cannot not exist.
This raises a great many points, and it's not altogether easy to know where to begin. But I think that perhaps in answering your argument, the best point with which to begin is the question of a necessary being. The word necessary, I should maintain, can only be applied significantly to propositions, and in fact only to such as are analytic, that is to say, such as it is self-contradictory to deny. I could only admit a necessary being if there were a being whose existence it is self-contradictory to deny. I should like to know whether you would accept Leibniz's division of propositions into truths of reason and truths of fact.
So truths of reason are going to be like analytic truths. Truths of fact are going to be synthetic truths. So truths of reason are necessary truths in the Russellian definition. So for him, necessary, when we speak of a necessary being, we mean a being that cannot not exist. So this anticipates Gottlob Frege as, sorry, not Frege. This anticipates Saul Kripke and his idea of necessary existence. Whereas in Russell, he thinks necessary means a contradiction is entailed when this statement is denied. Okay? So bear in mind, if a theist took this position of what a necessary being is, of what the term necessary means, then perhaps, right, they would need to argue that there is a contradiction entailed if you deny the existence of God. But perhaps he's playing on the fact that Copleston is probably trying to be as charitable as possible and not say that Russell believes in a logical contradiction, but a metaphysical one. So there's a distinction between the two for Copleston, but for Russell, he collapses the two into the same. Now, here's the question, right? Can we, under Russell's definition, call God a necessary being, right? Because this can only be applied to truths of reason, so propositional statements. But God isn't a propositional statement. God as an existence is a synthetic thing. It's something that is, it's not necessarily synthetic, sorry. It's an experience thing. It is something that actually exists, not as a proposition. So not just as a linguistic scheme or a semantic scheme, but something that actually is real, like you and I, but on a greater scale. Okay? So a metaphysical contradiction would be, a logical contradiction is something that is entailed when something is denied. So like a P and not P, like P and its negation. A metaphysical contradiction or metaphysical impossibility is basically that there is no way in which there is a possible world where this thing could exist. Now, you could say because it's a contradiction we're denied, or some principle of fact. So if the Bible exists, Islam cannot be true. Now, that may be because the God of the Bible will never reveal Islam. The God of the Bible will never, ever reveal Islam. So that's like a metaphysical necessity or impossibility. But notice the definitional game already. We're not even 5 minutes in. And in the contingency arg, we already have a distinction in what necessity means. Now, when it comes to the definition of necessity that we do see here, Copleston's definition of necessity, I shouldn't say Copleston's, but the fourfold definition of necessity wins out. Whereas when Russell and Copleston are having this debate, what's more popular in Russell's atheistic circles is this twofold definition of necessity, of analytic necessity. So just analytic statements that mean stuff.
The former, the truths of reason, being necessary.
I certainly should not subscribe to what seems to be Leibniz's idea of truths and reason and truths of fact, since it would appear that for him there are in the long run only analytic propositions.
There you go. And Copleston denies it. So bear in mind, Copleston and Russell both have two different views on what necessity actually means. Okay? Copleston and Russell both have two distinct definitions on what necessity actually means. And funnily enough, Copleston denies it. Now, I'm just talking about the history of the literature here. In the history, Copleston's definition wins out. So Copleston's definition becomes the accepted, the Copleston's account of necessity becomes the standard way that we think about necessity. Because we can have necessary truths that aren't analytic. We can have synthetic necessary truths. Now, for Copleston, one of those necessary truths is the incarnation or the Bible. I should say not. Divine revelation should be the way I say it. So, divine revelation, generally speaking, in every possible world, God will reveal himself, either to himself or to others. There's no contradiction entailed there if you deny that, but it's just something that is the case. For Copleston, who is a Trinitarian, the Trinity is metaphysically necessary. Now, there is a distinction that's being assumed here from Kant, right? And Kant makes this distinction between analytic statements and synthetic statements, okay? Now, this gets taken on by the Vienna Circle, okay? And the Vienna Circle, what the Vienna Circle was a group of atheistic philosophers who tried to reduce religious language to meaninglessness. They didn't even want to argue that religion was true or religion was false. They wanted to say religion means nothing, so it can't be true. Okay. Now, Russell is not part of the Vienna Circle. Okay. People that were part of the Vienna Circle were people like Rudolf Carnap and A.J. Ayer. A.J. Ayer, really important guy when it comes to verificationist principles of truth. Okay. Now, Copleston, ironically, when he has this theory of necessity, an analytic statement is, oh, let me answer the question before. Sorry, GZ. An analytic proposition is a proposition that, an analytic statement is like a proposition that is like true or false, okay? That has to do with maths or logic or things of that nature, right? A synthetic statement is a statement that has to do with reality, usually empirical reality. So if I say a bachelor is an unmarried man, this is definitional. So analytic statements have to do with the definition of the term and its application in a logical system. So when we say, right, that a bachelor is an unmarried man, then this is an analytic statement. A bachelor is an unmarried man is an analytic statement. Okay? Now, a synthetic statement would be something like Sig drinks water, because the items in there have nothing to do with the definition of Sig, but rather something that takes place in reality. So another example of an analytic statement would be like water is water, right? But an example of a synthetic statement would be like water is wet, right? So the distinction there is whether you can test it or not empirically. So usually synthetic statements are empirical statements and analytic statements are logical statements. And that's sort of where Russell's coming from. Now, here's the problem that we have. Where do we really demarcate the two? Let's consider the following example, guys, okay? So I'm going to ask you this example in the chat, right? Water is H2O, okay? Now, bear in mind, okay, when we talk about analytic statements, usually, they are a priori. So you don't, they are true in virtue of what is contained in the statement. You do not need external empirical verification or experiential verification or theological verification. You can analyze the statement in itself to verify its truth or falsity. So if I say a bachelor is an unmarried man, I can verify that statement through the definition itself. I don't need to go anywhere else. Now, if I say a bachelor is not an unmarried man, even though that's a false statement, that's still an analytic statement. Okay? Now, here's the killer though. What about statements like water is H2O? Now, bear in mind, Some philosophers like Russell will take this as an analytic statement, but many philosophers now may disagree with Russell because H2O, even though we know it's identical to water, H2O is a chemical element that you have to discover. There may be a possible world where those chemical elements don't exist. So even though you have a truth that is necessarily true, it is necessarily true that in every world, water is H2O, 2 hydrogen atoms and an oxygen atom. You have to discover that in the world. You have to look at an object in the world and determine that. So although it's metaphysically necessary that water is H2O, you would still need to empirically verify that statement. So when it comes to necessity, perhaps we can use that loophole. Okay? So analytical a priori, synthetic a posteriori. Yes.
It would seem that for Leibniz, truths of fact are ultimately reducible to truths of reason. That is to say, to analytic propositions, at least.
Right. Truths of fact are basically just truths of reason.
For an omniscient mind. Well, I couldn't agree with that. For one thing, it would fail to meet the requirements of the experience of freedom. I don't want to uphold the whole philosophy of Leibniz. I've made use of his argument from contingent to necessary being, basing the argument on the principle of sufficient reason, simply because it seems to me a brief and clear formulation of what is, in my opinion, the fundamental metaphysical argument for God's existence.
But to my mind, a necessary proposition has got to be analytic. I don't see what else it can mean. And analytic propositions are always complex and logically somewhat late. Rational animals are animals is an analytic proposition. But a proposition such as this is an animal can never be analytic.
Well,
in fact, all the propositions that can be analytic are somewhat late in the build-up of propositions.
Take the proposition, if there is a contingent being, then there is a necessary being. I consider
So I already want to touch on that, what he says.
And logically somewhat.
God's existence.
But to my mind, a necessary proposition has got to be analytic.
So a necessary proposition has to be analytic. Right? So when he thinks of necessary propositions, right? He thinks that any synthetic proposition cannot be necessary. Okay? That's Russell's point. Now, then he continues this, and look at the way he builds.
I don't see what else it can mean.
I don't see what else it can mean, which is what you hear from atheists all the time.
And analytic propositions are always complex. And
Analytic propositions are always complex. Now, let me take you through what he means by complex and simple propositions, okay? So, a simple proposition is just when there's one thing in the sentence. So, X. That's a simple sentence. Okay? A similar example is King David. Okay? Or really, I should be just David, because David can also mean there is an X such that X is David and has the property K of being the king. Like you could write it out like that potentially, right? And a complex statement is when you have two simple sentences together. And a simple statement or atomic statement is just a statement with like one sentence. All right? Just one sentence. So an example of a simple sentence is water. Okay? That is a simple sentence. A complex sentence is water is wet. Now, Russell makes this really interesting point. He says that this statement, bachelor, and this statement, bachelors are unmarried men, are not necessarily the same. He says this statement is analytic. This statement is not analytic. This statement is not analytic. But notice, right? Chat, if you're on TikTok, if you're on YouTube, put a 1 in the chat if you think that this sentence means the same thing as this sentence. So the sentence in green, which says bachelor, 1 in the chat if you think it means the same thing as unmarried man. 2 in the chat if you think they are semantically different. So bear in mind, this is the nature of what analytic and what necessary means for Bertrand Russell. So you can see how we have necessary meaning something different in the mind of modern scholastics, modern Eastern Orthodox, modern Palamites, and modern atheists, modern philosophers. Brother Sig is dividing par excellence explanation of what seems to be very context positive. Okay, thanks. Nah, RJ, I appreciate that, man. Sig is providing a par excellence explanation of what seems like very complex concepts, I am sure. I once more appreciate how inadequate my capacity for comprehension is, aka slow learner. Haha. Nah, don't worry about that. You're not slow, you're quick. So two. So you think they mean something different. So, but bear in mind, all I gave you guys was the word bachelor. All I gave you was the word bachelor. Here, maybe I could do something like this. Sig, okay? So that's the first statement. The first statement is sig, okay? And the second statement is sig is sig. Now, here's my question. Do those two statements mean the same thing? Put a 1 in the chat. Put the 1 in the chat. Put a 1 in the chat if it does mean the same thing. Put a 2 in the chat if it does not. They serve different linguistic functions. Spooks, you onto something. You onto something. I like that response, Spooks. I like that response. Okay, some people are saying 1. Mandem are saying 2. Mandem are saying 1. Give your opinion. It's okay. Be open. Be open to what you want to say. Bachelors are unmarried men and unmarried men are bachelors. It's like if I were to be named Mark, I would still be Lorenzo. It's not different. But bear in mind what Russell's saying. Russell is saying something really specific. He's saying that necessary propositions are analytic. And in order to be analytic, you can't be simple. You can't be a simple sentence. You have to be, right? You have to be something like P and Q, at least. You can't just be P. So notice the philosophical diatribe that's going on right now. Jeezy, P and P equals P would be the same, no? Well, semantically, not really. That's the idea. So if I tell you P, if I tell you Jesus, yeah, like it means something. But if I say Jesus is Jesus, it's defining something very specific. There's content you can analyze because it's complex. But if I just give you a simple sentence, there's nothing really in that. Isn't sig equals sig presupposed when you say sig? Yeah, that's fine. P can mean something to someone else. Don't go too crazy. P can just mean anything. P is P, right? P just mean anything. Okay? P means anything. So one is complex. And so under Russell's gonna say, yeah, this thing right here is a necessary proposition. But if you just gave me a word, I can't tell you it's necessary. I might have to tell you it's synthetic. Right? So bear in mind, that's the reason why for him, the laws of logic are analytic and thus necessary statements, necessary existences under Russell's view. Because for Russell, these analytic statements like A equals A have to exist. There's a contradiction entailed, according to Russell, when you deny this. Same thing with Russell's paradox. Contradiction is entailed when you deny this. So that's what Russell's saying. Sig, isn't Jesus equals Jesus just tautology? Yes, and it's true. But they're different ways of describing the thing. That's what Russell's getting at. It's really, really precise.
And logically somewhat late.
Now, he says they're logically late. Now, what he means by that is when you make the sentence, when you build the sentence, you have to add something on. So when I say, let's say P, when I say P, I'm missing something. I need to turn this into an analytic statement. In order for me to turn it into an analytic statement, I have to do this. That's what makes it analytic. So analytic statements for Russell are logically late, meaning you need to add more content in order to get you over that definitional threshold, to get you over that hump, to get that person's statement into necessity, to make it analytic. That's what Russell's saying. Now, the reason Russell's going through this whole diatribe is so that he can defend. Remember the whole point from the beginning of a necessary being. The whole point for Russell is so that Russell can defend the idea that there are necessary propositions, but he doesn't think there can be necessary existences that aren't just propositions. So Russell would be okay with saying God is God, and he could say that is a necessary existence. That's a necessary existence. But to say God exists, right? That is not a necessary proposition unless you define God as pure existence, which is what Aquinas did, right? But that might be begging the question.
Rational animals are animals is an analytic proposition. But a proposition such as this is an animal can never be analytic.
So this is the example Russell gives. So he says, rational animals are animals. Hey, can someone give us some music to listen to this debate as well, please? Because I want to listen to music whilst listening to the debate. So he says, rational animals are animals. But the distinction he makes is this is an animal. Now, the reason why he uses the word this is because you need to actually see what the this is. Similar if I say Rex is an animal. Now, obviously that's a name for a dog, but we don't know if it's a dog yet. See what I'm saying? Right? So rational animals are animals, analytic, right? Because it's just telling you a truism. It's just going to be true in virtue of the laws of logic. You don't need to analyze anything in the external world for that statement to be true, to be verified as true. All I need to do is look at the statement itself. But if you say this is an animal, synthetic according to Russell.
Well, in fact, all the propositions that can be analytic are somewhat late in the build-up of propositions.
Right, they're late in the build-up of propositions, like I said before. Sig, then you got to add stuff. Sig is sig. Right?
Take the proposition, if there is a contingent being, then there is a necessary being. I consider that that proposition, hypothetically expressed, is a necessary proposition. If you are going to call every necessary proposition an...
So this is an interesting statement. Copleston says, fine, right? Let's play your game, Bertrand. Let's play your game. Let's see what you're really on. Let's see what you're really trying to get down to. And so Copleston's reply, right, is as follows. If there is a contingent being, then there's a necessary being. Now he's going to say this statement is necessary. Okay? Now, why is he doing that? Think. Think. Why is Copleston doing that? Because he's now going to critique the correctness conditions for necessity that Bertrand Russell gave. That's what he's about to do. So, to clarify, this old man on the screen right now, is Bertrand Russell. Sorry, is Frederick Copleston. Okay? You can tell by the little white collar at the bottom, yeah? This white man right here is Bertrand Russell. Alright.
Analytic proposition, then in order to avoid...
By the way, does anyone have any music that I can play? Because I want to play music in the background. Also, make sure you leave a like on the stream. Like up the stream to get this out there. Thank you for the rose, orthotheist. I thank you for the support. A butterfly, thank you for the heart me. I appreciate you. RJ, thank you for the $20. Thank you so much for the $20.
The dispute in terminology, I will agree to call it analytic, though I don't consider it at all dispute every necessary expressed. Take the proposition, if there is a contingent being, then there is a necessary being. I consider that proposition, hypothetically expressed...
No copyright lo-fi? Some dead sounds, man. Yes, let's go with jazz, actually. Yeah, this is good. All right.
Is a necessary proposition. If you are going to call every necessary proposition an analytic proposition, then in order to avoid a dispute in terminology, I will agree to call it analytic, though I don't consider it a tautological proposition. But the proposition is a necessary proposition only on the supposition that there is a contingent being. That there
That's the point that we wanna note there. See that?
there is a contingent being actually existing has to be discovered by experience. And the proposition that there is a contingent being is certainly not an analytic proposition. Though once you know, I should maintain, that there is a contingent being, it follows of necessity that there is a necessary being.
The difficulty of this argument is that I don't admit the idea of a necessary being.
He's just denying necessary beings at this point. That's all Russell's doing. Russell's just denying necessary beings. Now, the reason he gave was because he wanted to reduce all necessary statements, or the ontology of necessity, down to just statements, down to just propositions. Okay? However, Copleston notes, look, I can now turn my arg into what you want. Now accept it. Russell's like, dude, no. I'm not going to accept your statement, dude.
and I don't admit that there is any particular meaning in calling other beings contingent.
He thinks there isn't actual meaning in calling a being contingent. So what he's saying is, when you say X is contingent, that doesn't mean anything. So he's saying, when you say X is contingent, okay? So Russell, this is a fascinating point by Russell. Russell thinks when you say X is contingent, that's identical to saying X is he thinks that they're the same in meaning. So that's a really interesting point, right? So that's what I would recommend.
These phrases don't, for me, have a significance, except within a logic that I reject.
Do you mean that you reject these terms because they won't fit in with what is called modern logic?
Well, I can't find anything that they could mean.
So when he's referring to modern logic, he's referring to the logic that was inherited from the Vienna Circle in the 20s. So Russell is saying, look, in logic, the term contingent doesn't, in his account of logic, the term contingent doesn't actually mean anything. It doesn't actually garner any notion, right? Idea or concept. Now, we take that for granted, right? We take that for granted because if you're watching this channel, you're most likely a Christian, or you're most likely someone open to Christianity and open to Christian metaphysics, whereby Aristotelianistically, so with Aristotle and with Plato, with those kinds of philosophies, we take the definition of necessary, contingent, impossible. We take the definition of those words very, very lightly. We take them for granted. It's very easy to generate those definitions because the definitions have already been given to us by other people. Okay? So that's the idea that's being had. But Bertrand, when he's making his own logic, when he's now having to inherit this entire school of logic that he is perfecting from the late 1800s into the early 20s, post-World War II, and now into, post-World War I, and now into the 1940s. Because again, the Vienna Circle was only around 20 years before Bertrand Russell's prime, when he's speaking in this debate here. Russell is saying from these amalgamations, we don't really see what contingent means, which in my view, I think this is number one, a cheeky bit dishonest, because I think Russell personally thinks that he's not a necessary existence. I think that there are good motivations and reasons for believing that people that are in this debate know what necessary means and what contingent means. Like, do you have to exist? No, right? Like, I don't think Russell's going to commit himself to say that. So I don't think it's necessarily that honest. But I think Russell is being honest when he's saying, I don't really see what this can mean under my schema because I don't want to assume yours. And Copleston's granting this as well. Copleston is raising a fantastic point. So bear in mind, for the rest of this debate, when you hear Russell say X is contingent, he thinks X is contingent is equivalent to X is... That's what he thinks it is.
The word necessary, it seems to me, is a useless word, except
It's a useless word.
As applied to analytic propositions, not to things.
It is a useless term, except... What's up, Sid? Got you blasting in the speaker at work. Sorry. Sorry, Gerson. So, he's saying the word necessary... He thinks the word necessary, right, is a useless word except when applied to propositions and not things. Put a 1 in the chat if you're understanding, if you're learning, if you're learning with us, or put a 2 in the chat if basically Sig is waffling and he should like turn off the stream. So this is something that's really important, right? How do they justify just creating a new way to define terms? Well, when you create your own schema, you have to create your own terms. When you create your own view, you got to make up your own terms for what that means. Okay? So bear in mind, it's that recommitment back to the top thing that he started with, right? So the first objection to the argument from necessary existence is actually on the definition of what necessary means. The definition of what necessary means. So remember, Copleston's argument for God is a contingency argument. It's an argument moving from possible things to necessary things, moving from contingent things to necessary things, things that could fail to exist in themselves, and then moving to something that cannot fail to exist in itself. That's what he's talking about. By virtue of itself, either essentially or personally. But Russell Russell wants to say, nah, you can't apply these terms to God. You can't apply these terms to things that you think exist. You can only apply them to statements, to propositions. Which, number one, means you can't call God a necessary being because it doesn't mean anything. But number two, as Copleston is pointing out, and as Russell has conceded, you can't call human beings contingent because they semantically don't mean anything. So not only can't you call God necessary, he's also thrown out this idea that you can't call God contingent, which is really interesting. Or at the very least, to be charitable to Russell, he doesn't understand how that would make much sense.
Well, in the first place, what do you mean by modern logic? As far as I know, there are somewhat differing systems.
Well, he doesn't know what he means by modern logic, so there's different modern logic systems, true.
In the second place, not all modern logicians surely would admit the meaninglessness of metaphysics.
There you go. Because ultimately, he's inheriting this Vienna Circle idea, right? Now, bear in mind, this may be a straw man of what the Vienna Circle were ultimately trying to do, but that's the effect the Vienna Circle gave off to the religious community, which Copleston's a part of. So Copleston says, look, bro, you're basically telling me that any argument that I use for God that isn't scientific is like it's ass, like it doesn't work. And he's like, dude, I don't even think other people around us would agree with what you're saying. Like, I don't even think other logicians in your field would agree with what you're saying. You know, like maybe you need to clarify that. Ross was like, I don't care.
We both know, at any rate, of one very eminent modern thinker whose knowledge of modern logic was profound, but who certainly did not think that metaphysics are meaningless, or in particular that the problem of God is meaningless.
Right.
Again, even if all modern logicians held that metaphysical terms are meaningless,
which is prevailing now because most logicians are atheists in the modern day, according as of 2020.
It would not follow that they were right.
Right. Just because you think it's meaningless doesn't mean it's actually meaningless.
The proposition that metaphysical terms are meaningless seems to me to be a proposition based on an assumed philosophy.
And that's the point that Copleston really makes really well. That this already assumes a framework in the background that hasn't been proven. Like I'm saying again, guys, super chats are on. I don't know if the super chat came on last time, but we'll try and get it up and running again, okay? So super chats are on. Make sure you are supporting the content. If you are on TikTok, I am reading TikTok chat a little bit. I'm seeing meows in the comments. This is fire. Thank you so much for the comment, Joseph. Thank you so much, Aspirin Aesthetic. I appreciate you guys. Make sure you share on TikTok as well and share on YouTube.
The dogmatic position behind it seems to be this. What will not go into my machine is non-existent, or it is meaningless, or it is the expression of emotion.
This is, oh my days, this is rude. Look at, yo, no. Look what he said, look what he said.
The position behind it seems to be
Look what he said.
that
So he says, this idea that metaphysics is meaningless, or at least these statements being meaningless, according to Russell, Copleston basically claps back and is like, yeah, like, this is what I think you're saying. I think you're saying anything that doesn't fit into my system doesn't mean anything, so there.
meaningless. Again, even if all modern logicians held that metaphysical terms are meaningless, it would not follow that they were right. The proposition that metaphysical terms are meaningless seems to me to be a proposition based on an assumed philosophy. The dogmatic position behind it seems to be this.
Here, let me put on the thing again. So, Straw Man of Russell by Copleston. The dogma of Russell is this.
This is a test super chat message.
I'm just testing. All right.
Out that anybody who says that a particular system of modern the proposition that metaphysical terms are meaningless, whose knowledge of modern logic was profound, but who certainly did not think that metaphysics are meaningless, or in particular that the problem of God is meaningless. Again, even if all modern logicians held that metaphysical terms are meaningless, it would not follow that they were right. The proposition that metaphysical terms are meaningless seems to me to be a proposition based on an assumed philosophy. The dogmatic position behind it seems to be this. What will not go into my machine is non-existent, or it is meaningless, or it is the expression of emotion. I'm simply trying to point out that anybody who says that a particular system of modern logic is the sole criterion of meaning is saying something that is over-dogmatic. He's dogmatically insisting that a part of philosophy is the whole of philosophy.
There you go.
After all, a contingent being is a being which has not in itself the complete reason for its existence.
You
That's
just
what
get,
I mean
and so he
by-
just gives the definition. It's like, dude, like this is what I mean. This is what I mean by contingent. Okay, you're just denying my death, and you haven't provided reasons why you're denying my death, and you even used my death of contingent. Like, bro, like you can't just deny my definition and then say that I am being dogmatic about my definition when you haven't provided reasons as to why my definition sucks.
contingent being.
Because I think there's this implicit idea that actually I think Copleston realizes that Russell doesn't actually have a good objection to the contingency arg, because I think Russell thinks it follows through pretty nicely. So his actual objection is, I don't think necessary beings can exist because I don't think it makes sense to give the term necessity to a god.
You know as well as I do that the existence of neither of us can be explained without reference to something or somebody outside it.
There you
Our
go.
parents, for example.
There you go.
A necessary being, on the other hand, means a being that must and cannot not exist. You may say that there is no such being, but you will find it hard to convince me that you do not understand the terms I am using. If you do not understand them, then how can you be entitled to say that such a being does not exist, if that is what you do say?
Well, there are points here that I don't propose to go into at length. I don't maintain the meaninglessness of metaphysics in general at all.
Okay, so he doesn't say metaphysics is meaningless, which is why I think that this might be a straw man or maybe a hasty generalization. Right? And by hasty generalization, I'm not using it in the fallacious sense, but just to say that he's trying to lump Russell into this group that he's not part of.
Maintain the meaninglessness of certain particular terms, not on any general ground, but simply because I've not been able to see an interpretation of those particular terms.
There you go.
It's not a general dogma, it's a particular thing. But those points I will leave out for the moment, and I will say that what you have been saying brings us back, it seems to me, to the ontological argument that there is a being whose essence involves existence.
But again, right? It's not the same. You're changing the argumentation from the contingency arg to an ontological argument for God's existence, which is really interesting. But
so that his existence is analytic. That seems to me to be impossible. And it raises, of course, the question what one means by existence. And as to this, I think a subject named can never be significantly said to exist, but only a subject described, and that existence, in fact, quite definitely is.
Right. So this is where they shift into the ontological argument. But this is interesting though. He's like, a thing that's named cannot be identical to being existence. Okay. Now, here's my problem that I have with this whole issue. Okay. In Christianity, we don't say that Jesus Christ can be named. You don't say that God can be named. We actually say the opposite, right? We say that God is above every name. He's given a name above every other name, namely existence. So that's the idea. That's the actual idea. But again, right? A thing that cannot be named cannot be identical to existence. That's Russell's point. Copleston could appeal to the spiritual tradition, the monastic tradition of the Christian community, and just say, look, bro, we don't believe that God has a name. We believe God is his existence itself. And that's just the Thomistic idea. That's the Thomistic position, which Russell is completely aware of. So it wouldn't really make much sense to critique it here.
It's not a predicate.
Well, you say, I believe, that it is bad grammar, or rather bad syntax, to say, for example, T.S. Eliot exists. One ought to say, for example, the author of Murder in the Cathedral exists. Are you going to say that the proposition, the cause of the world exists, is without meaning? You may say that the world has no cause, but I fail to see how you can say that the proposition that the cause of the world exists is meaningless. Put it in the form of a question. Has the world a cause, or does a cause of the world exist? Most people surely would understand the question, even if...
So this is really good. Hey guys, should we go on GodLogic's live stream later as well? I'll end the stream and then I'll head back up. Yeah, Muslims, why do you reject the sacrifice of Jesus? Should I do this? Should I go up on this? Should I go up on this? We can if need be. Oh. Alright, cool. I'll go now.
Yeah, then you're a very stupid man.
Say
Can
hello
you
to
get
the
out
stream.
now?
Say hello to the stream.
Listen,
Alright, cool. Don't worry. Oh my days. Say hello to the stream. Mama, say hello to the stream. She got the call. Hold on, guys. I'm coming back. I gotta go do some. I need to run an errand real quick. Hold on. That's stupid, man. Oh. What? Alright, I'm back. Yo, mods, can we ban Arnold, please? Yeah. Ban Arnold, please. Thanks. Anyways, guys, if you're on TikTok, move your way over to YouTube. We're gonna close the live down on YouTube. So we're gonna close the live down on TikTok now. So God bless you guys on TikTok. I'm gonna end the live here. Move over to YouTube. Hate when TikTok chat just gets a bit weird. Sig is venerating his old chair. That's exactly what I was doing.
They don't agree about the answer.
Certainly, the question, does the cause of the world exist, is a question that has meaning. But if you say...
So Copleston's response to whether existence is meaningful or existence is a predicate, because Russell takes obviously the obvious Kantian objection. So the obvious Kantian objection that existence isn't really a predicate So it doesn't really tell you anything about the subject. So you're not really saying much about the existence of God. It's a meaningless argument, which seems to come from the Vienna Circle anyways. However, Copleston says, well, let me give you an example of saying something that does actually mean something. So when he says a declarative statement, does a cause for the world exist? Now, what he's done is he's turned the word existence into, or statements that talk about existence, into a declarative statement, into a declarative sentence. And Copleston has done that by making the statement into the form of a question. So when you make statements into the form of a question, what that does, okay, is that generates, right? It generates a specific meaning to the question, right? Usually, we can tell when something means something based on whether you could ask it in a question format, right? If I say, hey, is there a chair in that room? That question means something to the recipient because it informs the recipient on what you are garnering. So if I said there is a chair in the room, it would garner something. If I say a chair exists, though, which is the Kantian objection, or a coin exists, that doesn't really mean much. You haven't actually told me anything really about what a coin is, what it does, what are its properties, what are its features. It doesn't declare anything. But Copleston actually claps back at this and gives an example of where existence is being taken as a predicate, right? But the statement actually means something in the form of this declarative sentence that he's turned into a question. So notice, right? Copleston believes there is a cause for the world. The cause for the world exists. That's the statement. And he's taken that statement and made it into a question. And the question he makes it into is as follows, right? Does a cause for the world exist? So is it true that there is a cause for the world? And according to Wilfred Hodges, who we go through in our Books of Worm series on Patreon, make sure you add up the Patreon, what that does is it gives meaning. And that's where Copleston wins again. I'm not saying Russell's like losing and Copleston smashing him, but these are points of times where Copleston is coming with good information and Russell's not, and Russell's coming with good information and really, really helpful insights, and Copleston is not.
Yes, God is the cause of the world. We're using God as a proper name. Then God exists will not be a statement that has meaning. That is the position that I'm maintaining.
Now, Russell really clarifies his position kind of well. He's saying there is actually a difference between saying there's a cause for the universe and then God exists. Because if you are saying there is a cause for the universe, then the cause of the universe has to possess existence. It can't be identical to it. Because to say God exists, right? To say that God exists is really, according to Russell, to say God. Now, this is a very interesting argument, especially against people who believe that God is identical to his existence. This is the standard Christian view. This is a view that seems to be championed by those in the Neoplatonist tradition. This seems to be a view that's championed in Aristotelian metaphysics. This seems to be a view that is maintained in the Eastern Christian tradition, in the Palamite tradition especially, with the essence and existence of God being identical, yet distinct from the other energies of God. So the idea of God being identical to his own existence, this is basically something that Russell is responding to, right? If you say the cause of the universe exists, right? And then you say God is existence, right? Then, according to God exists, right? Then it follows that you're actually saying God is just God, or God. You're not saying God is God, you're just saying God. Then Copleston should reply, actually, that's not the account of being or ontology that I follow. So it's just wrong. Like, that's not even what we mean.
Because, and therefore, it will follow that it cannot be an analytic proposition.
Thank you for the 10 euros, Abu Akhraf. You said great session. I appreciate you. Justin Ramirez, thank you for the 4 big boy dollars. Thank you for thank you for that so much.
Ever to say that this or that exists. Take, for example, suppose you take as your subject the existent round square. It would look like an analytic proposition that the existent round square exists. But it doesn't exist.
No, it doesn't. Then surely you can't say it doesn't exist unless you have a conception of what existence is.
Cold. You can't say what it's not unless you know what it is.
Phrase, existent round square, I should say that it has no meaning at all.
I quite agree. Then I should say the same thing in another context in reference to a necessary being.
Well, we seem to have arrived at an impasse. To say that a necessary being is a being that must exist and cannot not exist has for me a definite meaning. For you, it has no meaning.
Well,
and that's the impasse that Copleston feels like he's arriving at. But Russell may give some nuance here, which is why he's accredited as one of the best philosophers of his era.
we can press the point a little, I think. A being that must exist and cannot not exist would surely, according to you, be a being whose essence involves existence.
Yes, a being.
Now, bear in mind, at least for this conversation they're going to go into, Russell assumes what the essence existence distinction actually is. He makes a distinction between essence and existence. And he says, look, when you make your ontological argument, which by the way, Copleston has granted, he's saying when you do make this argument, okay, you have to be careful and actually explicate what that means. He's saying when you make this argument, you're saying that existence exists. Okay, fine, right? What does that actually mean?
Being the essence of
But he's also granting this Thomistic idea, this Jesuit idea of essence being identical to existence itself.
is to exist. But I should not be willing to argue the existence of God simply from the idea of his essence, because I don't think we have any clear intuition of God's essence as yet.
That's a really good point. So look at that, right? So he's literally saying, look, I am not being circular when I talk about God's existence or the fact that God's existence is contained in his essence somehow, because I don't actually have the foggiest idea of what God's essence is.
I think we have to argue from the world of experience to God.
We have to argue from the world of experience to God. Which is a posteriori, right?
Yes, I quite see the distinction. But at the same time, for a being with sufficient knowledge, it would be true to say, here is this being whose essence involves existence.
Yes, certainly, if anybody saw God, he would see that God must exist.
So that, I mean, there is a being whose essence involves existence, although we don't know that essence. We only know there is such a being.
Yes. I should add, we don't know the essence a priori. It is only true a posteriori, through our experience of the world that we come to a knowledge of the existence of that being. And then one argues, the essence and existence must be identical, because if God's essence and God's existence were not identical, then some sufficient reason for this existence would have to be found beyond God.
So it all turns on this question of sufficient reason. And I must say, you haven't defined sufficient reason in a way that I can understand.
And that's true. He's assumed the PSR, right? But Copleston never actually gave a definition, and Russell's very right to point that out. This is a weakness in Copleston's theory. Copleston never tells us what the PSR is. He just assumes it. He doesn't give a specific view on the PSR. He doesn't give a strong version of the PSR or a weak version of the PSR in the first 15 minutes of this discussion. So we've been discussing for around 12 minutes about the argument for God, and he hasn't actually presented what the PSR is for this Leibnizian contingency argument, which requires the PSR. He's actually making a PSR argument, and he hasn't provided the thing that you need to make the PSR argument. So let's see how Copleston, right? Let's see how Copleston responds to this charge.
What do you mean by sufficient reason?
Good.
You don't mean cause?
Not necessarily. Cause is a kind of sufficient reason.
So what does sufficient reason mean? So this is the really important part, right? What is a sufficient reason? Guys, can we get this up to 100 viewers? We can do that. So what is a sufficient reason? That's the real nugget. What is a sufficient reason? What does that actually mean? What does that entail? Okay, we need to understand and know that, and once we do know that, something good may happen. Now, usually people think a sufficient reason is a cause of some kind, right? Whereas Copleston is a bit more reserved. Copleston says, well, not necessarily, right? A cause is a kind of sufficient reason, but it's not the definition of it.
Only contingent being can have a cause. God is his own sufficient reason, but he is not cause.
God is his own sufficient reason. So he defends the idea that God obeys the PSR. Now, this isn't a bad point. I think this is actually a really good point. Because the reason of God's existence is contained within the thing.
Of himself. By sufficient reason in the full sense, I mean an explanation adequate for the existence of some particular being.
Now, he says the explanation adequate for the existence of a particular being. Now, how does this work with the Trinity? Since Copleston is a Trinitarian Christian, he is a Catholic. So how does that work? Well, firstly, someone can appeal to a doctrine in Christianity known as perichoresis, which is the idea that each person is in each other. So actually, the ground for the Son's generation is to be found within the person of the Son, which is really interesting, right? So each person is within each other. All right, I am in the Father and the Father is in me. So on dogmatic grounds, he could make an argument to suggest why the Son can still be the necessary existence by this argument, or rather the one God or cause of all is the person of the Father, and he's proving the monarchy of the Father, which is a more Eastern Orthodox view.
But when is an explanation adequate? Suppose I am about to make a flame with a match. You may say that the adequate explanation of that is that I rub it on the box.
Well, for practical purposes, but theoretically that's only a partial explanation. An adequate explanation must ultimately be a total explanation, to which nothing further can be added.
Then I can only say you're looking for something which can't be got, and which one ought not to expect to get.
To say that one has not found it is one thing. To say that one should not look for it seems to me rather dogmatic.
Well, I don't.
That's an interesting point. Look what he said.
Explanation must ultimately be a total explanation.
So an adequate explanation needs to be that is total, right? To which nothing can be added. That is what he said.
Which nothing further can be added.
Then I can only say you're looking for something which can't be got and which one ought not to expect to get.
So Russell then replies, well, you should look, well, then you're looking for something that cannot be God. But then he says, we should not expect to find it.
To say that
So he says, not only is it not God, but don't ever think that we can ever find this cause. We can never find this cause. So we shouldn't even try. And Copleston responds interestingly, and he says,
one has not found it is one thing. To say that one should not look for it seems to me rather dogmatic.
which is true. They're being dogmatic.
Well, I don't know. I mean, the explanation of one thing is another thing, which makes the other thing dependent on yet another, and you have to grasp this sorry scheme of things entire to do what you want, and that we can't do.
But are you going to say that we can't, or that we shouldn't even raise the question of the existence of the whole of this sorry scheme of things? Of the whole...
So Russell then says, look, man, this is just a sorry scheme of stuff. Like, you're literally trying to work out an entire chain, and then you're going to try and get to the beginning of the chain, but that doesn't work because we can never fully recognize what is in the chain to begin with. And so Copleston's like, okay, well, you're just saying that's a lot of work. Like, should we not try?
universe?
Yes, I don't think there's any meaning in it at all. I think the word universe is a handy word in some connections, but I don't think it stands for anything that has a meaning.
Again, he's being subjective, right? But he's saying things like the word universe doesn't actually mean anything. It's like pragmatic, but ultimately meaningless. That's the idea.
Well, if the word is meaningless, it can't be so very handy. In any case, I don't say that the universe is something different from the objects which compose it. I indicated that in my brief summary of the proof. What I'm doing is to look for the reason, in this case the cause, of the objects, the real or imagined totality of which constitute what we call the universe. You say, I think, that the universe, or my existence if you prefer, or any other existence, is unintelligible.
First, may I take up the point that if a word is meaningless, it can't be...
So Ziploc for the 499. Can God enter creation? Well, thank you so much for the 499. I can tell you, no, God in his essence cannot enter creation, but he can through the manifestation of his activities and through the incarnation.
Handy. That sounds well, but isn't in fact correct. Take, say, such a word as the or than. You can't point to any object that those words mean, but they're very useful words, and I should say the same of universe. But leaving that point, you asked
we had a good time at
whether I
Balboa
consider that
with,
the universe is
our brother,
unintelligible.
Anthony from Bible or Quran. We got.
I shouldn't say unintelligible. I think it is without explanation. Intelligible, to my mind, is a different thing.
Okay. So ultimately, he's saying that it's without explanation. Now, I want to go back there.
Intelligible has to do with the thing itself, intrinsically, and not with its relations.
Well, my point is that what we call the world is intrinsically unintelligible apart from the existence of God. You see, I don't believe that the infinity of the series of events, I mean a horizontal series, so to speak, if such an infinity could be proved, would be in the slightest degree relevant to the situation. If you add up chocolates, you get chocolates after all, and not a sheep. If you add up chocolates to infinity, you presumably get an infinite number of chocolates. So if you add up contingent being to infinity, you still get contingent beings, not a necessary being. An infinite series of contingent beings would be, to my way of thinking, as unable to cause itself as one contingent being. However, you say, I think, that it is illegitimate to raise the question of what will explain the existence of any particular object.
It's quite all right if you mean by explaining it simply finding a cause for it.
Well, why stop at one particular object? Why shouldn't one raise the question of the cause of the existence of all particular objects?
Because I see no reason to think there is any. The whole concept
Just
of cause
because you
is-
don't see a reason to think that doesn't mean that you should. Okay, so just because you don't think that there is a reason to think that doesn't mean that one should not think that. Doesn't mean that that is not the case. So someone could say this is an incredulity fallacy.
is one we derive from our observation of particular things. I see no reason whatsoever to suppose that the total has any cause whatsoever.
So therefore, the total does not have a cause? Of course not, right? But that's the standard apologetic that is garnered. That's the standard apologetic that seems to arise from these things, right? And it's interesting why that sort of argument arises, right? That's the reason why this argument arises ultimately is because it is easy to argue this way. It's very simple to argue this way, right? So that's why people argue the way that they argue. And this comes from Russell's staunch conservatism when it comes to not accepting certain points.
Well, to say that there isn't any cause is not the same thing as saying that we shouldn't look for a cause. The statement that there isn't any cause should come, if it comes at all, at the end of the inquiry, not at the beginning. In any case, if the total has no cause, then to my way of thinking, it must be its own cause.
There you go. If there is no external cause, then there has to be an internal cause. If there's no external reason, then the reason has to be internal. And if it is internal, then it's a necessary existence. You still get back to the you still get back to Copleston's argument.
It seems to me impossible. Moreover, the statement that the world is simply there, if an answer to a question, presupposes that the question has meaning.
No, it doesn't need to be its own cause. What I'm saying is that the concept of cause is not applicable to the total.
So he's now saying that the concept of cause cannot be applied to the total aggregate of this, which is where they're now talking about the above premise, okay? Right? The aggregate of this. So the totality of objects must have an existent reason for their existence external from itself. Now, I don't really see how Copleston does generate this, right? Apart from the fact that he, in his idea of reason or explanation, I think Copleston takes this to mean something more fundamental than just something is created, but rather there is an explanation adequately that is total as to why the entire set of contingent affairs exists as this set of contingent affairs rather than not. Let me try and visualize this, guys, right? So let me try to visualize this, okay? So let me try to visualize this. So imagine, chat. So the universe never came into existence. So chat, let me try to visualize this for you, right? Try to visualize this for you. Imagine, yeah, you had a person, because I know everyone's going to God Logic stream now, innit? I think that's why I should have streamed earlier. But let's say, for example, okay, we have one. Let's go with let's look at this, right? Let's look at this. I don't know if you know if this is good, chat, but let's look at this, okay? So, thank you so much for the donations as well, guys. Keep them coming. So let's look at. I say keep them coming, but don't actually keep them coming. It's all good. Like I'm, like I do appreciate them. I do appreciate them. I'm really glad at accepting gifts. So you know what I'm saying. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. So let's look at Is this the light? This is the light. Oh yeah, this is the light. Yeah. All right. So if I just turn it on. Okay. So let's say, for example, okay. Let's say this, for example, okay. We got 3 universes, okay. And we have the real universe, which is this one. We have 2 fake universes, or rather possible universes. So each universe is possible. According to Copleston is saying, look, even though we have this universe, it's possible that this universe could be true. So even though we have this, so even though we have this universe that exists, it's also possible that this universe could have been true as well. So not only do we need to explain why this universe is true, we also need to explain why this universe exists rather than this one, or none of the universes of the 3. So not only do we need to explain each individual contingent fact, so each individual contingent possible fact, we also need to explain why all of these contingent facts actually are true rather than these other contingent acts. Why are these contingent facts true rather than these other contingent facts? And not just why are these specific contingent facts true, but why is X, which is all of these contingent facts, these specific contingent facts, why are these specific contingent facts true rather than these contingent facts? Or rather, a contingent fact, or a set of contingent facts that's like 1, 4, and 9. And this is universe A, right? Why isn't there a universe that has 4, 5, 6 rather than 1, 2, 3? And rather than that, why is it 1, 2, 3 specifically rather than 1, 4, 9? Right? Rather than 1, 4, and 9 in each of these universes, and that's the universe that's actually real. That's the PSR. So the PSR is more fundamental. So if we go back to the explanation of what the PSR is, Copleston explained that a sufficient reason is an adequate explanation that is total, to which nothing further can be added. So if you return back to the graph here, I think what Copleston is trying to say is, look, we need to not just explain why each individual contingent fact exists, but why the set of contingent facts, which is itself a contingent fact, also exists. Why does this contingent fact exist rather than this other contingent fact? Now, if this contingent fact that explains this contingent existence, if that is also contingent, well then it's just added to the entire group of contingent facts. Because on the sly, Copleston has defined the universe as basically all contingent facts that don't have explanation in themselves. So then we have a necessary fact, right? We're gonna call that N. We have a necessary fact that actually explains this contingent set of facts, right? This contingent set of facts, rather, and is able to account for why this contingent set of facts exists, rather than these contingent set of facts. So why this one over this one? Well, we need some sort of arbitrator that's able to do that, that does not have contingent facts in themselves. But this raises an important question, right? Wouldn't that mean that God's determination is necessary? That he can only determine those specific contingent facts? That's an argument. That's an argument that Russell makes. Okay?
Then you would agree with Sartre that the universe is what he calls gratuitous.
Well, the word gratuitous always suggests that it might be something else. I should say that the universe is just there, and that's all.
Well, I can't see how you can rule out the legitimacy of asking the question how the total, or anything at all, comes to be there. Why something rather than nothing? That's the question. The fact that we gain our knowledge of causality empirically from particular causes doesn't rule out the possibility of asking what the cause of the series is. If the word cause were meaningless, or if it could be shown that Kant's view of the matter were correct, the question would be illegitimate, I agree. But you don't seem to hold that the word cause is meaningless, and I don't suppose that you're a Kantian.
I can illustrate what seems to me to be your fallacy. Every man who exists has a mother, and it seems to be your argument is, therefore the human race must have a mother.
No. Composition fallacy, but no. That's not what he's saying. He's not saying what is true of the parts has to be true of the whole. But what he's saying is that it just so happens that what is true of a contingent fact is also going to be true of all contingent facts. Right? So if you have the set of all contingent facts, unless the set of all of these contingent facts is a necessary fact itself, which would mean that you deny possible worlds, meaning a possible way that other sets of contingent facts could exist, then you have to at least accept that these contingent facts, the sum of them, are also contingent. Because there's nothing that, under his view, right, of necessity, there is nothing in this set of contingent facts that generates necessity. So they're always going to remain contingent. We're going to stop this at 26, and then I'll stop the stream, I think.
But obviously the human
So then we can do the religious experience and then the morality discussion over the next couple days.
it hasn't
So tomorrow, guys, come back here. Wednesday, come back here.
other. That's a different logical sphere.
Well, I can't really see a parity. If I was saying every object has a phenomenal cause, therefore the whole series has a phenomenal cause, there would be a parity. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying every object has a phenomenal cause, if you insist on the infinity of the series, but the series of phenomenal causes is an insufficient explanation of the series.
There you go. Now, you see what he's done there, right? He's done the same thing that I was trying to explain, okay? So let's put that again in real time, okay? So even if someone appeals to an infinite regress, okay? Even if you appeal to a vicious regress, I say vicious, but even if you appeal to an infinite regress, what Copleston does is really, really smart, okay? So Copleston says, let's say you have this, let's see. I can't even write infinity, man. I'm so bad at this. Right? So sorry about the writing, guys. Let's say we have a causation chain, okay? Let's say we have a causation chain, okay? And this causation chain extends into infinity, okay? Now, he's saying, right, that each contingent fact, so each dash is a contingent fact, okay? So each dash on the paper, as you can see here, each dash is going to be a contingent fact, okay? A CF, a contingent fact. Now, if each thing is a contingent fact, it is being explained by another contingent fact and another contingent fact and another contingent fact all the way down, okay? And then he's saying, okay, well, this is going to extend all the way into infinity, okay? Which is fine, right? He's accepting that. But Copleston and Russell both agree that it's still a set. It is still a group of contingent facts. It's just that the number in the set is infinity. The number within this group of contingent facts is infinity. So you still need to have an explanation for the contingent group, for the entire group, right? Because technically, this contingent group, the chain itself isn't necessary. It's still a contingent group. So why does this specific infinite group of chains exist rather than another group of infinite chains? That's the question, right? Why could it not be that in fact there is a series of infinite contingent objects, and those objects are all just this tissue? So this tissue exists because of this tissue, and that tissue exists because of that tissue, and that tissue exists because of that tissue. Why is it this infinite series sustained rather than the tissue series? You see where Copleston's getting at, right? You still need an explanation for the chain itself, for the group, for the set itself. And that is the argument that Copleston's putting forward. Oh, crap. That is the argument that Copleston's putting forward. Hopefully everyone understands that. Put a 1 in the chat if you understand. Put a 2 in the chat if you don't understand. Apologies if you don't understand.
Therefore, the series has not a phenomenal cause, but a transcendent cause.
So the phenomenal, so there's a distinction that Russell makes, not Russell, but there's a distinction that Copleston makes, right? Between phenomenal causes, right? And transcendent causes. So this is very similar to the per se cause, per se, or essentially per se, or per se causes, or essentially ordered causes. That's what Phaser says, right? There's a difference between the per se cause and a per accidents cause. Now, a per se cause, as we all know, a per se cause refers to the idea of no matter what time or extension, you right now in the current moment of this chain existing are the cause for everything under the chain. If you go out, everything underneath you stops existing. Okay? Now, when it comes to per se causes, per accidents causes, you're just in the chain. An example of a per accidents cause, an example of a per accidents chain, or what we can call a phenomenal chain, right? And phenomenal chains are slightly different in Copleston's view, but we're gonna talk about it anyway. Okay. An example of a per accidents chain is Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Okay. So we have Abraham, who begat Isaac, and then he begat Jacob, right? So this is an example of a per accidents chain. So Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Now, why is that the case? If Abraham has begotten Isaac and Isaac has begotten Jacob, if Isaac dies, right, if he's removed from the picture, Jacob's still alive. So once Jacob starts existing, he doesn't actually need Isaac to live or to remain and sustain his existence. Okay? Now, here's the problem that we have, okay? Here's the problem that we do have. A per se series is referring to in its instantiation right now, it can't change. Now, let's say, right, we have a cut from a sword. We have the cut from the sword, which relies on the sword, which relies on the hand, which relies on the human. Now, at any point in time, if one of the things in this chain stops existing, the whole chain breaks down from the bottom. So let's say my human hand was cut off for some reason, the sword would fall on the floor, and you would stop being cut. So that's an essentially ordered chain. Now, the problem is Copleston isn't necessarily referring to existential inertia or things like this, but this is something that has been addressed. Now, for Copleston, phenomenal causes refer to just contingent relations of some sort, or contingent facts that do have explanatory power. And then you have transcendent causes, which are just completely outside the chain.
Well, that's always assuming that not only every particular thing in the world, but the world as a whole, must have a cause. For that assumption I see no ground whatever. If you give me a ground, I'll listen to it.
Well, the series of events is either caused or it's not caused.
Like I said.
If it is caused, there must obviously be a cause outside the series. If it's not caused, then it's sufficient to itself. And if it's sufficient to itself, it is what I call necessary. But it can't be necessary, since each member is contingent. And we've agreed that the total is no reality apart from the members. Therefore, it
But
can't.
even if it's a per accidents chain, the idea is why is this per accidents chain existing rather than this other per accidents chain? You need something that transcends the per accidents chain.
Necessary. Therefore, it can't be caused, uncaused. Therefore, it must have a cause. And I should like to observe in passing that the statement that the world is simply there and is inexplicable can't be got out of logical analysis.
Yeah, no, you're using a posteriori methods or just charging it to the wind. You can't logically deduce the fact that the universe just exists just because.
I don't want to seem arrogant, but it does seem to me that I can conceive things that you say the human mind can't conceive. As for things not having a cause, physicists assure us that individual quantum transitions in atoms have no cause.
Well, I wonder now whether that
Now he's appealing to quantum fluctuations. The same way modern scientists do today.
isn't simply
Is this the argue used with the moment? Basically, this is a similar argument, yeah.
a temporary inference.
It may be, but it does show that physicists' minds can conceive it.
Yes, I agree.
And then Copleston concedes that you can agree with something that seemingly has no cause. Now, does this mean this may be a big concession for later into the debate, right? But they still obey causal principles because technically those things are in superposition and they were put in superposition by something.
Some physicists are willing to allow for indetermination within a restricted field, but very many scientists are not so willing. I think that Professor Dingle of London University maintains that the Heisenberg uncertainty principle tells us something about the success, or the lack of it, of the present atomic theory in correlating observations.
Because he's referring to high.
Not about nature in itself, and many physicists would accept this view. In any case, I don't see how physicists can fail to accept the theory in practice, even if they don't do so in theory. I cannot see how science could be conducted on any other assumption than that of order and intelligibility in nature. The physicist presupposes, at least tacitly, that there is some sense in investigating nature and looking for the causes of events, just as the detective presupposes that there is some sense in looking for the cause of a murder.
And that's something that the Christians always do. We say that it is innate in human beings to want to search and seek after these things that we call the good. And we try to satisfy our intellectual and moral tanks to do so.
The metaphysician assumes that there is sense in looking for the reason or cause of phenomena. And not being a Kantian, I consider that the metaphysician is as justified in his
Yep, and he just rejects the Kantian notion, which became standard in modern philosophy.
assumption as the physicist. When South, for example, says the world is gratuitous, I think that he hasn't sufficiently considered what is implied by gratuitous.
I think there seems to be a certain unwarrantable extension here. The physicist looks for causes. That does not necessarily imply that there are causes everywhere. A man
true. Very true. Just because you look for causes doesn't mean that there are causes everywhere. But Copleston is addressing the fact that you should look for causes.
Man may look for gold without assuming that there is gold everywhere. If he finds gold, well and good. If he doesn't, he's had bad luck. The same is true with the physicists look for causes. As for Sartre, I don't profess to know what he means, and I shouldn't like to be thought to interpret him. But for my part, I do think the notion of the world having an explanation is a mistake. I don't see why one should expect it to have. And I think that what you say about the scientist assumes is an overstatement.
Well, it seems to me that the scientist does make some such assumption. When he experiments to find out some particular truth, behind that experiment lies the assumption that the universe isn't simply discontinuous. There is the possibility of finding out a truth by experiment. The experiment may be a bad one, may lead to no result, or not the result that he wants. But that at any rate there is the possibility, through experiment, of finding out the truth. That he assumes. And that seems to me to assume an ordered and intelligible universe.
I think you're generalizing more than is necessary. Undoubtedly, the scientist assumes that this sort of thing is likely to be found and will often be found. He does not assume that it will always be found.
True.
And that's a very important matter in modern physics.
Well, I think he does assume, or is bound to assume it tacitly in practice. It may be that, to quote Professor Haldane, when I
So
light the
he
gas
says
under the
even
kettle,
when even though in principle they may in principle obviously say, well, we might not find everything, they certainly act as though they will find everything.
some of the water molecules will fly off as vapor, and there's no way of finding out which will do so. But it doesn't follow necessarily that the idea of chance must be introduced except in relation to our knowledge.
No, it doesn't. At least, if I may believe what he says. He's finding out quite a lot of things. The scientist is finding out quite a lot of things that are happening in the world, which are, at first, beginnings of causal chains, first causes, which haven't in themselves got causes. He does not assume that everything has a cause.
Surely, that's a first cause within a certain selected field. It's a relatively first cause.
I don't think he'd say so. If there's a world in which most events, but not all, have causes, he will then be able to depict the probabilities and uncertainties by assuming that this particular event you're interested in probably has a cause. And since in any case you won't get more than probability, that's good enough.
It may be that the scientist doesn't hope to obtain more than probability, but in raising the question, he assumes that the question of explanation has a meaning.
Which gets back to the original point.
But your general point then, Lord Russell, is that it's illegitimate even to ask the question.
Wait, is Bertrand Russell a lord? I think he is. Oh my gosh, he is. He actually is a Lord Bertrand Russell. The Right Honourable the Earl Russell, yeah. Yeah, Order of Merit. Yeah. Wow. Wow. Yeah. Wow, well done, Bertrand. Frederick didn't get that though. Frederick was a loser. Yeah, Copleston was young in this. 1907. Yeah, Copleston was not that old. 1907 to 1948. That's not that old at all. He was like late 30s.
The cause of the world.
Yes, that's my position.
Well, if it's a question that for you has no meaning, it's of course very difficult to discuss it, isn't it?
Yes, it is very difficult.
Yeah, so he's like, yeah, I think it is very difficult. So this is prime Bertrand Russell, and not even prime Bertrand Russell yet. This is nice though. No talking over each other. Nobody pulling the term Sky Daddy back before they invented Reddit. Facts. Or Twitter. But guys, we're going to end the debate there. We're going to end the review of the debate there. As you can see, we've covered most of it. We are going to stream the last two sections over the next 2 days. The next section we're going to do is on religious experience and morality. So make sure you stick around for part 2. Thank you so much for joining the stream. for all of the super chats, for all of the donations, for all of those that joined the Twitch, sorry, the Patreon. Thank you. Make sure to head over to patreon.com/SIIIG1 to get yourself some perks, to get yourself some exclusive videos, and to have access to the Discord server where we have the community. And if you want the notes that we were working on today from the debate, we will be posting them in the Discord server. So if you do want the rough notes that I was making today, make sure you get at that. Okay, thank you so much for everything that you guys have been doing for me. Thank you so much for everything.